It was an unusually chilly night in late October of 2022 when I found myself alone at home deep in the countryside of rural Kentucky. My family had left town earlier that day for a short trip, leaving me to look after our old farmhouse and our two dogs, Scout and Daisy. I'd spent the evening watching TV, trying to distract myself from the quiet emptiness of the house. Around midnight, as I switched off the TV and headed toward my bedroom upstairs, I noticed something peculiar through the living room window, a faint light flickering near the edge of our property close to the dense woods that bordered our land. At first I assumed it might be someone from the neighboring farm checking fences, but curiosity got the better of me. I stood at the window, squinting into the darkness, my heart beginning to pound softly in my chest. The flickering was steady, almost rhythmic, and seemed to float slowly closer before stopping completely. Suddenly it went out, plunging the yard back into total darkness. Unease rippled through me as I quickly pulled the curtains shut, rationalizing it as a trick of the eyes or maybe an animal rustling through the trees. Still unsettled, I climbed upstairs to bed, locking my bedroom door behind me, a habit born from an overactive imagination and a healthy dose of caution. Sleep proved elusive. The silence of the house pressed heavily against my ears, broken only by the distant howl of the wind outside. I tossed restlessly, feeling a creeping sense of dread that refused to fade. Around 2 a.m., I jolted awake to Scout growling softly downstairs. It was unusual. Scout was a calm dog, rarely agitated. His growls soon escalated to sharp, frantic barks, joined quickly by Daisy's nervous whimpers. Heart racing, I scrambled out of bed and quietly unlocked my door, stepping softly into the hallway. The dog's barking intensified, now punctuated by low, threatening snarls. Carefully descending the staircase, I peered cautiously around the corner into the living room. Scout and Daisy stood rigidly by the back door, hackles raised, staring intently through the glass into the darkness beyond. Approaching slowly, my pulse quickened when I saw what had alarmed them. There, silhouetted against the distant barn, stood a dark figure. It was motionless, just barely visible against the moonlit field. Cold fear crept into my chest. Who could be out here at this hour in the middle of nowhere? As I watched, the figure moved suddenly, swiftly vanishing behind the barn. Panic surged through me. I quickly secured every door, double-checked locks, and stood in trembling silence as the dogs continued pacing anxiously. Deciding to calm myself, I retreated upstairs once more, hoping the intruder had simply moved on. But my relief was short-lived. Barely 5 minutes later, a loud metallic clanging echoed sharply from outside, the sound of something heavy striking our metal gate. The dogs exploded into frantic barking again, charging toward the windows. Heart pounding violently, I glanced out again. The gate swung slowly open, though I was certain I'd locked it earlier. Dread tightened my throat as my eyes frantically scanned the shadows, trying to locate the intruder. Without warning, a loud crash resounded from somewhere downstairs, the unmistakable sound of breaking glass. Fear overwhelmed me. Someone was now inside my home. Breathless and trembling, I grabbed my phone and desperately dialed 911, whispering urgently into the receiver as I barricaded myself back into my room. While waiting for help, every sound became deafening. The creak of floorboards, muffled footsteps cautiously ascending the stairs. I held my breath, heart slamming painfully against my ribs. Then a soft, scraping noise began just outside my door, slow and deliberate, like fingernails gently tracing patterns on the wood. Paralyzed with terror, I stood frozen, praying help would arrive quickly. Suddenly, headlights sliced brightly through the window, the welcome sign of the sheriff's vehicle pulling swiftly into the driveway. Moments later, urgent knocking echoed from the front door, accompanied by authoritative voices announcing their arrival. Relief flooded through me, and cautiously I emerged from my room, stepping shakily downstairs to greet them. Officers quickly swept the property, finding clear evidence someone had indeed broken in. A window shattered near the kitchen, and muddy footprints tracking across the floor. But after a thorough search, they found no one on the premises. As dawn approached, officers assured me they'd patrol the area and urged me to call immediately if anything else happened. Alone again, I sat awake until morning, unsettled and unable to shake the feeling of vulnerability. Days later, while walking near the barn, I discovered something that still haunts me, a small rusted tin box partially buried beneath the dirt. Inside was a collection of old photographs. grainy images of the house taken secretly from the shadows dating back decades, each marked with dates and chilling notes like she saw me tonight and soon. To this day, authorities haven't identified who broke in or the origin of those disturbing photos. And even now, months later, every creak of the old house in the dead of night brings back vivid memories of that shadowy figure standing silently in the yard, waiting patiently and perhaps still watching me from the darkness. It was just after midnight in late January of 2023 when I found myself driving along a winding, desolate highway through the dense forests of northern Oregon. I had just finished visiting friends and was eager to return home. Snow fell lightly, coating the road with a thin layer of white that sparkled under my headlights. The quiet solitude of the night felt calming at first, the familiar hum of the engine lulling me into a peaceful rhythm. But gradually something began to shift. The trees lining the roadside seemed taller, thicker, casting strange shadows in the pale moonlight. I knew this route well, having traveled it many times, but tonight something felt different, unsettling. I glanced at my GPS for reassurance, but instead the screen flickered erratically before going completely dark. A chill ran down my spine, but I reassured myself it was just the remote location interfering with the signal. Still, a creeping unease began to settle over me. I considered pulling over to reset the device, but quickly dismissed the idea, the dense forest stretching infinitely around me, offering no comfort. As minutes passed, I noticed the scenery outside changing subtly. The trees appeared gnarled and twisted, their branches clawing ominously at the sky. Even stranger, I realized with a sudden jolt of fear that I hadn't passed any familiar landmarks for miles. Confusion and anxiety tightened their grip as the road became narrower, less maintained, seemingly abandoned. I tried to rationalize that perhaps I'd missed a turn in the snow or misread the signs, but deep down I knew this was impossible. This road had no intersections, no exits, it just continued onward, winding deeper into unknown territory. Heart pounding now, I slowed down, searching desperately for any sign of civilization or an opportunity to turn back. Suddenly my headlights illuminated something ahead, a figure standing perfectly still on the side of the road, facing away from me, their silhouette stark against the snowy backdrop. Instinctively I slowed further, preparing to stop, thinking perhaps someone needed help. But as I neared, dread twisted violently within me. The figure didn't move or acknowledge my car's approach. Instead, it remained motionless, head bowed slightly, shoulders hunched. An inexplicable sense of danger screamed through my veins, urging me not to stop. Swallowing hard, I pressed the accelerator gently, deciding to continue onward. But as I passed, my peripheral vision caught something horrifying. The figure turned slowly, deliberately, revealing a pale face, twisted in agony, mouth agape as if trapped in an eternal scream. My breath caught painfully in my throat as I sped away, hands trembling uncontrollably on the steering wheel. Adrenaline surged through me, the need to escape overpowering rational thought. As I raced forward, more figures began appearing along the roadside, emerging silently from the darkness, each one standing frozen, watching me pass with those same haunted expressions. Panic threatened to consume me entirely, but I kept driving, desperate to escape whatever nightmare I'd stumbled into. The road continued endlessly, twisting and turning through darkness, figures growing in number, lining both sides of the road, silent and unmoving. Suddenly, my headlights revealed something ahead, a makeshift roadblock consisting of fallen branches and logs stacked haphazardly across the road. Unable to avoid it, I slammed on the brakes, skidding to a stop mere inches away from collision. Shaken and breathless, I glanced nervously around. The figures were closer now, moving slowly, deliberately toward me from all directions. Terrified, I threw the car into reverse, tires spinning uselessly against snow-covered asphalt. Realizing escape was impossible, I sat frozen, helplessly watching as the figures closed in. Just as despair overwhelmed me, the figures abruptly halted, forming a silent circle around my vehicle. In the rearview mirror, I glimpsed another figure approaching slowly, a hooded silhouette taller than the others, moving with a strange grace. As it neared, the circle parted respectfully, allowing it through. My pulse thundered painfully in my ears, each breath ragged and shallow. The hooded figure stopped inches from my driver's window, slowly raising one pale hand. With a flick of its wrist, the fallen branches blocking my path inexplicably cleared, sliding silently aside as if moved by invisible hands. Confused yet relieved, I hesitated, staring at the figure whose face remained hidden beneath the hood. Then it leaned slowly closer, lifting its head slightly to reveal something that froze me utterly. A face identical to mine, eyes hollow and lifeless, features twisted into a cold, emotionless mask. Paralyzed by terror, I stared into my own empty eyes, unable to move or scream. The figure silently stepped back, gesturing toward the open road ahead. Without thinking, I slammed the accelerator, speeding frantically away, heart hammering violently against my ribs. Moments later, I found myself back on familiar roads, recognizable landmarks appearing reassuringly outside my windows. Confusion and relief battled within me as I struggled to rationalize my experience. Later, safely home, I searched desperately online for explanations, discovering chilling reports of similar incidents. Travelers describing becoming lost along deserted roads, encountering silent, haunted figures, always led by a hooded being bearing their own likeness. Each account ended identically, the traveler narrowly escaping, forever haunted by the encounter. Even now, months later, I avoid driving alone at night, terrified of becoming lost again, trapped forever along that endless road, forced to confront whatever dark reflection waits silently for me in the shadows. It was late one frigid night in early February of 2022 when I found myself stranded at a nearly abandoned train station on the outskirts of Chicago. I'd missed my connecting train due to delays and was now forced to wait alone, shivering beneath the pale glow of a flickering fluorescent light. The old station had clearly seen better days, its walls cracked and plaster peeling, echoing softly with the hum of malfunctioning lights and distant creaks of settling wood. As the minutes dragged on, the platform grew increasingly silent until the quiet became oppressive. Checking my watch nervously, I realized it would be another hour at least before the next train arrived. Frustrated but resigned, I settled onto a bench, wrapping my coat tightly around myself to ward off the chill that seemed to seep through the walls. Just as I began to relax slightly, something strange caught my attention. A low, rhythmic humming, barely audible at first, but steadily growing louder. I glanced down the platform curiously, expecting to see an approaching train, but the tracks remained empty, stretching endlessly into the darkness. The sound seemed to vibrate from the walls themselves, deep and resonant, unsettlingly organic. Feeling suddenly uneasy, I rose slowly from the bench and moved toward the ticket booth, hoping to find someone who could explain the source of the noise. But as I approached the booth, I found it locked and dark, clearly abandoned for the night. The humming intensified, now accompanied by a soft rattling from somewhere deep within the station. Every nerve in my body screamed that something wasn't right. Retreating quickly, I made my way toward the far end of the platform, hoping distance might ease my anxiety. Instead, it only heightened my dread. Peering nervously down the tracks again, I noticed something new, a faint glow appearing in the distance, growing brighter and clearer by the second. My heartbeat quickened with relief, assuming it was my long-awaited train approaching, but as it drew closer, dread seized my chest. The approaching vehicle was unlike any train I'd ever seen. A battered, rust-covered locomotive, its paint peeling and windows shattered. Yet it moved silently, gliding smoothly along the tracks without any mechanical sound. Frozen in disbelief, I watched helplessly as it slowed to a stop directly in front of me. Its doors creaked slowly open, revealing an interior bathed in pale, flickering light. Against my better judgment, curiosity compelled me forward, peering cautiously inside. The train car appeared empty, rows of torn, filthy seats stretching silently forward. But something felt profoundly wrong. An icy coldness emanated from within, so intense it made my breath visible in the air. Suddenly, from deep inside the car, a figure emerged slowly from the shadows. A conductor dressed in an old-fashioned uniform, face obscured beneath a wide-brimmed cap. He stood motionless, silently beckoning me forward with one pale, bony hand. Every instinct screamed for me to run, but I remained rooted to the spot, unable to tear my gaze away from him. Then, abruptly, the conductor raised his head, revealing a face that made my blood freeze solid, a twisted visage of hollow eyes, gaping mouth stretched into an eternal scream, frozen in silent agony. Terror surged violently through my veins, and I staggered backward, nearly tripping as I fled down the platform. Behind me, the doors slammed shut violently, and the mysterious train rolled silently forward, disappearing quickly into the darkness from which it came. Shaking uncontrollably, I collapsed onto a bench, desperately trying to rationalize what I'd just seen. Minutes felt like hours as I sat paralyzed with fear, heart pounding relentlessly against my ribs. Suddenly, footsteps echoed quietly behind me. Spinning around sharply, I found a frail, elderly janitor standing there, regarding me with sad, knowing eyes. Sensing my panic, he gently placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder, quietly urging me to calm myself. Hesitantly, I described the horrific apparition I'd witnessed. The ghostly conductor, the terrifying train, and the janitor's expression darkened instantly. He nodded slowly, explaining softly that decades earlier, a horrific accident had occurred on those very tracks. A late-night commuter train derailed tragically, claiming numerous lives in an instant. Since then, occasional reports surfaced describing ghostly sightings, a phantom train appearing inexplicably late at night, its doomed passengers eternally trapped aboard, forever searching for others to join their endless journey. Chills rippled violently down my spine at his words, realization gripping me coldly. Just then, distant sounds signaled my real train finally approaching, its familiar whistle and mechanical hum reassuringly normal. Thanking the janitor hurriedly, I boarded gratefully, eager to leave that haunted platform far behind. But as the train pulled away, something compelled me to glance back one final time. My stomach twisted violently. The janitor now stood motionless beneath flickering lights, slowly raising one pale hand in silent farewell. And beside him stood countless others, shadowy figures emerging quietly from darkness, faces twisted in sorrow and longing, watching silently as my train disappeared into the night. Even now, months later, every time I board a late-night train, dread tightens my chest, unable to shake the haunting fear that someday I'll again see those hollow eyes and gaping mouths, silent, lost passengers beckoning me toward a journey from which there is no return. If these chilling dead-of-night stories gave you goosebumps, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Remember, sometimes the darkness is better left unexplored.